Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Byrd, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. I am so excited to continue our sexual wellness series this week with our new episode. Returning to Women Mastering Midlife for a second time is Shauna Stewart, a certified sexuality educator, intimacy coach, and she was the visionary founder of Linger Boutique in Olympia, which we will touch on a little bit in a second. Shauna is dedicated to revolutionizing how we think about pleasure, rest, and self-connection. With a mission rooted in slowing down and normalizing intimacy as a vital part of wellness, she has created a sanctuary where pleasure isn't a luxury, it's a birthright. Shauna's sexuality education and intimacy coaching supports both individuals and couples through transformative journeys. She offers both private coaching programs designed to help clients rediscover desire, confidence, and authentic connection. And she also offers these fun little single sessions if you need to gently open the door to a deeper self-awareness and embodiment. I also have had a bit of FOMO myself, catching some glimpses of a recent retreat that I found that she did on social media. And she is the creator and host of Life Turned On podcast, where she challenges societal norms around aging, sexuality, and empowerment with intimate conversations, expert interviews, and inspiring personal narratives. Shauna's work is rooted in compassion, inclusivity, and deep respect for individual boundaries, offering shame-free spaces for healing and growth. It's my honor to introduce her, if you didn't listen to the first time she was here, and dive into her wisdom today. I'm so excited to have you back. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat again.
Yeah, so the first time we talked was like episode, 3, 4, something way down the list. I didn't even know how to use software. I had a terrible microphone, and I was still getting comfortable interviewing and questioning. And we talked about pleasure. And in the last year, even my framing and feelings around pleasure and intimacy and what midlife can look like from a sexual standpoint has completely shifted. And so I feel like now I have all these questions I didn't ask you because I was nervous or hesitant. And so now I'm sure we're definitely going to get the explicit listing on this podcast. And I look forward to it.
Well, and now you're doing a whole series on sexual wellness. That's excellent.
Yeah. I think that we need to start having these conversations, normalizing these conversations, not only for ourselves, but for generations to come. I feel like there's a more of a sexual awakening in women younger than us. We're kind of in that still weird, stuck I still wait for my parents to have the conversation with me about where babies come from. So we certainly weren't talking about anything to do with pleasure and even in education around sexuality. It was very male driven and very centered around the male orgasm or male pleasure. And it wasn't even an afterthought really for women. It just wasn't even on the table at all to be discussed.
Yep. Yeah, so absolutely. Now's the time. And we're going to dive in.
Yeah. So what sparked my interest in talking to you was I saw a post that you had put on Instagram, and it was this scoop. It was scooping vanilla ice cream, and for somehow that just it brought out the tingles. I was like, wait a minute, we need to discuss the fact that vanilla doesn't have to be boring. And so I was like, let's base it off of that. But also, there's this middle ground between vanilla boring and explicitly racy, pornographic kind of content, and adding the beauty and feminine to it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm all for all the types of sex you want to have. All the ice cream is available. I love that as long as it's consensual. Vanilla does get a bad rap in a lot of communities as being boring, and I think that that's a little bit unfair. it can be warranted in the sense that if we are just going through the motions and we're just putting parts into other parts and calling it good, that will get tiring over time. But there's so much depth that can be offered in the vanilla experience. And if you just use this metaphor of vanilla ice cream for a minute, like there is French vanilla, there's slow churned vanilla, there's vanilla, and we can add some pralines and maybe a drizzle of caramel on top once in a while, right? Yeah. And it really is about how much intensity, how much intentionality, and how much curiosity you're bringing into any given type of sex that you're having. Ropes can get boring. You can be, strung up by the chandelier dangling from your toes and be flogged, this, that, and the other. And that can be boring if you're doing the same thing every day, all the time, with lack of energy, intention, and presence. So
yeah, I feel like we're just checking a box very often. Like it's a to-do list item that you have to get done to maintain a relationship. And there's a lot more that you could enjoy about it.
100%. Yeah. I think that that's one of the unfortunate things that has happened in our culture. And especially as you were talking about with like the way we grew up, our generation grew up learning about sex was, if we were lucky, sex ed in the school, where it was very perfunctory and just really teaching us how to avoid problematic issues or scaring us into never having it. Yeah. Or we learned from Glamour and Cosmo magazine or Sex and the City. And so many of those conversations, especially the magazines, those quick little like 10 tips articles were always about how to give a better blowjob or how to give a better hand job. And it was always centered on the men's pleasure. And so the message is, it's not for us, over and over and over again. And so, of course, we think of sex as one more thing to do and that it's a to-do list because we literally say blowjob, hand job. It is work. Yeah. Like we name the thing a job and we put it on the list as another to-do list. And when we treat it like that, of course, it's going to feel like duty, obligation, and supremely unsexy and undesirable. And I think one of the big things that I've really taken away from the last several years of studying academically and personally is that if we're not having sex worth having, we're not going to want it. And one of the things that's especially interesting about women and some of the studies that are showing up for women in particular is that we desire and need novelty far more than we've been led to believe. We're told that men need novelty, and typically that's in the form of many different partners. But one of the things that happens with women is our desire tends to drop within about 6 months to 3 years. 3 years would be generous, but typically around that 1 year to 18-month mark, our desire drops because we get bored. And yeah, because because if we're centering the men's experience, the best way for a man to have an orgasm, or one of the best ways, if there's in a cis hetero relationship, is for penis and vagina intercourse. Mm-hmm. That feels good to them. It's an efficient and effective way to help them orgasm. That is not the most efficient and effective way for women to orgasm. And while there's a lot of those like love drug, new relationship energy hormones that are racing through our bodies in those early years, after that like tipping point, it's going to require a lot more intentionality and a lot more curiosity and diversity. And diversity doesn't have to mean, again, like the ropes or any kink-oriented things if that's not your thing. But it does mean like, can we play with energy? Can we play with who's giving tonight and who's receiving? Who's touching and who's being touched? And can we maybe explore a new part of our body that can be touched? Like, can your shoulder be the most erotic place on your body tonight? What about your ankle or your elbow? You know, some people can have armpit orgasms, and there's an endless possibility there are just endless possibilities that are available to us in our bodies when we slow down and we can get really present and really curious and intentional and be a little playful and think outside the box a little bit.
Well, and I think for women of our age, there's this whole, we're shriveling up and dying. We have no libido, blah, blah, blah. But for every time I've heard that, I've heard from a friend or a client or another woman that they like can't get enough and they are insatiable. And so we've got to kick it up and we've got to change it up or else it will get boring. I can totally see that.
Yeah. And I think that, again, it's like one of the things that I think is one of those deciding factors. One is, of course, health, and hormones can play a role in that. So being able to make sure that you're connected with a good medical provider that's listening to you. And then the second thing, again, is like, are you having sex that is worth coming back to? Is it good? Is it delicious? When you talk about the way like that ice cream scoop was going into the ice cream and you got that like shivery sensation.
Yeah.
Is that how your sex makes you feel? Or does it feel like, I guess it's like doing the dishes,
Yeah.
And
if you're running a list of things you need to do when you're done, that's probably not good sex.
Yeah. And it's not to like judge or shame anybody or your partner or yourself or whatever. That is normal, right? All of us require a different level of novelty, and really behind the novelty, what we're really desiring is intensity. We want to feel alive. We want to feel connected. We want to feel like something in our body is turned on and we're not just like robots going through the motions of everyday life. And to be able to experience that, it does require time. And I think a lot of us aren't willing to make that time because it does feel like it's in that job category of things of like, I'm going to check it off in 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
But when we can really allow ourselves expansiveness and real like intention and focus, not just in the amount, like the time when you're doing the thing, but the time leading up to doing the thing, it can really change the overall experience in a big way.
So what are some things that you, in working with couples who have kind of gotten into the humdrum and they've really lost that connectivity and that intensity, what are some things that you've kind of worked with couples, some examples of things that people can do?
Well, I think one of the things that's very easy for people to do when they feel bored is feel like I need to find a new position. I need to do it somewhere edgy or different. And that can all be part of it. What's interesting is where I tend to start with people is safety. I want you to feel so safe in your environment, in your body, and with your partner that your mind isn't thinking about the to-do list or thinking about protecting yourself or even trying to read your partner's mind in the experience. I want you to feel so safe that you can fully surrender into the experience of whatever is happening. And so starting with safety, this means really learning how to initiate really fun, sexy, and inviting consent conversations. This is something that we can borrow from the kink communities, even if we're not into whatever the kink activity is. So many of the skill sets developed by the queer, consensual, non-monogamous, and the kink communities can benefit all of us. And for consent, we can really draw on this idea of really vocalizing, and this can be really like cringy and uncomfortable for people, but this is why we have to practice it. And there's different ways to be able to do this, but be able to vocalize what it is we want to experience. Like, what is the thing that we're going to agree to do? And then how do we want to feel as a result?
Okay.
Do I want to feel connected? And is that emotionally connected, intellectually connected, physically connected? Do I want to feel surrender or do I want to feel power? Do I want to feel like ooey gooey or do I want to feel like I want to be the one touching and doing and delighting in the sensations on my fingertips? And getting really clear about like who's doing the thing and who the gift is for. And when we have these really intentional conversations on the front end, all of a sudden our brains can just kind of start like relaxing. We get out of that hypervigilance stage where we're still thinking about probably the dishes, also wondering, does this person like it? Are they bored down there? Are they like okay with this? Really learning how to cultivate safety through these consent conversations, make sure that you both can trust that you're both on the same page on this so you can fully surrender into the yumminess of the experience. So safety, and then obviously I've said this a few times already, but like slowing way down. And sometimes that means taking a really hard look at things that have nothing to do with sex in our lives, that are cluttering our lives so we don't even have room to think about it. We ought to be thinking about sex from like the morning time. And, you know, maybe we can't think about it all day long, but if it can pop into our heads and we can cultivate fantasy and interest, that tells our body that it's safe and it's okay to come alive and to start feeling that turn on and that energy throughout the day. Studies show that couples who actually snuggle after intercourse or after sex tend to have more of it and have more satisfaction with their sex lives because they're starting foreplay, essentially. They're starting foreplay after this last experience ended. Mm-hmm. So the next session's foreplay begins after the last one started, and then cultivating that foreplay throughout. But if our lives, and this has been one of those weeks for me where my husband is largely unavailable in the way that he normally is, and so a lot of stuff has been on my plate, and so I'm just like go, and know that I know that that's not sustainable for myself as a person and for us as a relationship. And so it's like we're gonna for sure have those times and those windows where things are chaos. And where are we building and cultivating space in our lives where we are making our relationship, our connection, and our sexual wellness a priority? And then I think that experimentation, too, is just a really fun area to play with. What I recommend for experimentation is to take the pressure way off it when you are trying something new.
Okay.
So oftentimes, like, again, if we are wanting to try a new position or try it on the kitchen counter or try it outside or maybe invite a toy or a new lubricant or arousal serum or something fun into the space, I recommend people blocking off experimentation dates, and however long you think you need to try something new, maybe make a little bit more extra time for it, just so you don't feel rushed. And the idea is really just to kind of, work out the kinks, figure it out, figure out the toy, figure out what you like, what you don't like. And it's just like an open exploratory session where we're not driving towards any kind of big orgasm or climax or performance. Nobody's going to win an award in this session. It is really just about getting curious about trying something new and then deciding okay, what do we like and what do we don't like? So when we actually want to play with it, we can slip more into that pleasure space than in that cerebral figuring it out space.
Yeah, there's so much anxiety that would come with that. To be able to discuss it and say, we're just going to carve out time to see how this goes. Mm-hmm. It could be a total disaster. It could be really fun. Mm-hmm. We'll iron out the kinks, all the things, so that the next time we do it, it's a little more dialed in. It really alleviates the pressure, because I don't know about other women, but one of my favorite places to live is in my brain. And so when that's the experience, how could that be fun? It's almost doomed to fail. And then if you have this expectation of some, life-altering, world-shifting orgasm, and then it totally falls apart and you're practically injured or something in the process, clearly that's not going to go well. And then you'll be afraid to even try other things later.
Yes. Yeah, correct. And the other thing is, you mentioned a really important point that you love to live in your brain. And this is something that I see all of the time. And this was me for the majority of my adult life. We have been taught culturally to prize everything from the neck up, right? We really value intellectualism, rational logic. we want to be able, like, I can argue myself in and out of anything until the end of time, and then have like 17 lists and stuff. So like we're constantly living from the neck up all day, every day. And then all of a sudden in the bedroom, we're supposed to feel good in our bodies. How are we going to do that? Right?
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that I work with folks, is offering a real deep embodied practices where people are actually teaching themselves to be very present in their body, to feel what their body is experiencing in any given moment. And it doesn't happen all overnight. It is a practice. And that's part of that, like slowing down in life, to be able to slow down in sex, is we're taking time to practice getting into our bodies, whether that's like, instead of doing yoga for the perfect pose, we're actually feeling like the juiciness of stretching either leg in down dog. And instead of being in this like performance mode, we're really in this embodied space where we're deep in our bodies. And that can happen through a variety of mindfulness practices, movement, and then even meditation can really help us. Even though meditation seems like it's something in our head, what it does is it de-escalates a lot of those stress factors that keep us above the head. So this is like where the safety comes in. Stress keeps us in the neck up because we're always in that like anxiety mode, where what you're saying. But meditation very much de-escalates anxiety in general and allows us to feel more safe, to be able to kind of drop down below the neck.
Well, and I think when we first talked, we talked about pleasure, and we talked about pleasure even outside of the bedroom was mostly what we touched on. Mm-hmm. And in thinking about things, like slowing down was one of the things that it's been the baseline of a lot of your conversations. It's like, just slow down and just enjoy life. And I think I've been more present in myself in finding pleasure in things like a warm bath or a hot shower, or, you know, a cup of hot tea, or sitting outside with like getting a little wet from the dew in the morning when it's cold, and like actually taking the time to feel all of the sensations that come along with that experience. And I mean, I hope my mother's not listening. I will say that at 45, I've had some of the best sexual experiences that I've had to date. And I think a lot of it is just being more present in my own body and feeling all the feelings that come along with external and internal sensory experiences that may not even be sexual at all.
Yeah. Yeah. The platonic pleasures are a great training ground for sexual pleasures, for sure. So I'm glad you're doing that. Good for you.
And now I'm like, okay, so let's dive into the other things, because I'm good at appreciating a nice warm bath by myself. But now let's talk about conversations around like one of the things when you were talking about safety and consent and those type of topics, I was in the previous episode I just recorded with the nurse practitioner, we were discussing how we always get so focused on, is the other person enjoying it? And just having that consent conversation of, today this is going to actually be where you are receiving and I am giving, and it doesn't matter. Like, it does matter, but not in the same sense of, this is for you to enjoy and to receive the gift I'm giving you, versus we're both like so wrapped up in what the other person is feeling and thinking that it just ends up dulling the experience for both parties.
Yeah. The power of communication is really magical, like what it does to our brains, and it's communicating, but also trusting that the other person is telling the truth. And that'll take practice, right? And then trusting that the other person will hold their limits, you'll hold yours, and that you're not going to agree to do anything that you can't agree to with a full heart. Yeah. If you're going to keep agreeing to things out of duty and obligation, you will keep hating your sex life, period. There are so many beautiful ways we can co-create experiences with our partners without compromising and settling. And I think the compromising and settling is ultimately what leads to the boring sex. And regardless of what act is being done, and I think that this is where, the vanilla sex ends up going oftentimes, because we're trying to check it off a list, or we're trying to, like you said earlier, like this is what I'm supposed to do to keep a healthy relationship or to keep my partner happy. And every time we do that, a little part of our soul dies.
Yeah.
and then
Beautiful life.
Yes. Yeah. And that's just not sexy.
No.
Right. But there's this whole idea that where we can co-create experiences with our partner that are delicious and yummy. And it takes what my desires and my limits are and your desires and your limits. And then we get to get really creative about like, what do we co-create together in that while honoring both persons' limitations.
Yeah. And I think I had the first conversation about boundaries, and I was pretty set in a boundary that then later I was like, maybe I'm not so set on that boundary. But the idea that it was firmly respected.
Yeah.
And then we could address it another time. We can change it. We can expand it. We can throw it out the window. But knowing that even regardless of whether or not I changed my mind about a boundary midstream, that the playbook was set before. Yes. And it meant something more in the back end of like, okay, there's plenty of time in the world to expand on that. But the fact that that boundary was held is very respectful and makes me feel more safe to experience and experiment further on down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen to all of that. Yeah. Because exactly what you're saying is then you're not protecting yourself against your partner and feeling like they're going to push the boundaries or try to just like tiptoe over it, or like maybe they didn't really mean it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where we do put up those walls, and for good reason, right? Especially as women, especially in this culture, those have kept us very safe in some ways. And also in other ways, we've lost a lot of potential and experience and pleasure and of ourselves as a result of like casting up big walls. I like to think of boundaries as like the edges of the playground, right? And if we stay well within that playground, and even sometimes like it can be fun, if you guys agree to it, to push it just a little bit, like get to that delicious edge, but we never pass it. And the more you and your partner play with that, the more you trust that like, oh, I can go to another level or try something new and know that like this, that, and the other will be respected. And that just allows for so much delicious energy and creates a lot more freedom and invites more creativity into the bedroom as well.
Yeah. The word repression, like I felt like repressed was the word that I was thinking of when you were talking about how, you know, we do kind of get repressed. The more we allow boundaries to be skewed, or the more we are saying yes to things that may not be of interest to us, you know, we all need to stop being so repressed.
Yeah. And there's like on the other side of repression is expression, like, or the opposite of repression is expression, and being able to fully claim your sexuality as your own. That sounds selfish, right? On the surface, where, especially in a culture where we've been taught that like our duty as women is to be the sex object for our male partners. When we claim it for ourselves, we invite a level of intentionality and power into that space. And when we come more alive, when we know what our boundaries are, when we know what we're interested in, what our desires are, when we can experiment with asking and then receiving it fully, all of that grows into something that is much more fun to be with than this like shut down, repressed, turned off person. In my own case with my husband, like for so long, I think that he and I were both treating my body like it was a machine, right? And even in the way, just in, again, platonic ways where I treated my body as something that food was only fuel. It was never for pleasure. My body was something that I had to like keep a certain way, and it was for function and form, but again, never pleasure. And when it came to more intimate times, he often got confused because he's like, well, these 3 buttons in this combo worked last time. Why isn't it working this time? And then I'm like, well, I don't know, because maybe I'm broken. And the reality is our desires, our wants are always going to be changing based on context, what we ate that day, how our day went, and even who's in front of us on any given time. So what we might like with one partner might be different than with a future partner or a past partner or a simultaneous partner. And that's all okay. There's just so much to be explored and expressed within ourselves. And it's that journey of discovering and finding it all that really leads to a fuller sense of self-expression, sexual self-discovery, but also just self-expression in how we show up in the world. And again, going back to this, like, is it selfish? And the question is, well, who does my husband, my partner, like to be with more now? Like the person that shuts down when he hits the wrong button, or the person who's very in tune with her body, knows exactly what kind of context lights me up, what context shut me down. I can clearly communicate that. And if one of us initiates and the other's not interested, we can still move towards connection in some other way. There's not just this constant conversation of like, so you want to do it? No. And then we just like go our separate ways. We are constantly figuring out like what is the next right move for us in this moment and in this time if we want to feel good together.
Let's take a quick pause to talk about something I know you'll love. If you've been listening to this series, you know that sexual wellness is such an important but often overlooked part of midlife. That's why I put together a free sexual wellness guide just for you. Inside, you will find answers to the top questions to ask your provider, reflection prompts to help you better understand your own needs, insights pulled from the amazing experts and podcast guests you're hearing right here, and I've also included a page with my favorite and vetted products. It's a resource designed to help you feel informed, empowered, and confident about your sexual health in this season of life. You can grab your free guide right now at womenmasteringmidlife.com/free-guides. That's womenmasteringmidlife.com/free-guides. You'll also find the link in the show notes below. Download it today and take the next step in reclaiming your sexual wellness. I was thinking about the whole like oxygen mask on an airplane emergency kind of thing. You do really want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself so that you can also provide for others. If I was repressed or shut down or stiff and rigid and all in my head, that's not serving my partner at all. So I think that all of these conversations are so important for women to be having and to be thinking as they're listening to us having this conversation of what they can do to help kind of get themselves out of that rut that they get into. But one of the things you just said about if you're not in the mood, because there are many times you live day in and day out with the same person for decades, it becomes, you're just not into it. There's a million things in your head or on your plate. You're caring for your kids, your sick parents, whatever, and they're interested. What is a good way to work together? Like, what's an example of something that you would suggest so that you're not just shutting your partner down and they get this feeling of being stonewalled and you go your separate ways?
Yeah. So in improv, we have this game called Yes and when it comes to sexuality, we have no but.
Okay.
So, no, I'm not interested in having sex tonight, but I'd be open to cuddling naked. Is that something you'd be interested in? No, but I'd be open to snuggling with lighter clothes on, like to get the skin on skin contact is where I'm going with this. And maybe that's not for you, but no, but the but invites connection and it could also be like, no, today has been a freaking nightmare. My nerves are on edge. I would like to go take a bath by myself, but I would love to get myself a little more centered and maybe we can try again tomorrow. Does that sound good? And so it's a no. So it's a boundary, but it's also an invitation at the same time. And something else along those lines is when we talk about not being in the mood, there's this thing called responsive desire. Have you talked about this on the podcast yet?
No.
Okay. So there's two desire types. There's spontaneous desire and responsive desire. Spontaneous desire is typically what we think of when we think of like wanting sex, that we have a sexy thought, then we get turned on and we have a sexy thought, we want the sex, then we get turned on and then we can be ready to go and go do it. There's another desire type that is called responsive desire, and that happens when we don't actually desire the sex until we're already physically aroused. And what's challenging about this, because a lot of sex therapists, coaches, and educators often just say, well, just do it because you'll be glad you did it when it's done. And I was told that. And I like nearly stabbed this person in the eyeballs with my imaginary pencil because I was like, no, I am not going to override my body, my agency. And like, no, we do that way too much as women. We need to stop overriding our body's signals and messages. And we can invite our bodies into curiosity and openness when we get to learn more about them. And so we might not be in the mood now, but if we know that we have responsive desire and that we might want it in a little bit, then that no but opportunity gives us the opportunity to be like, hey, if we snuggle for 5 minutes naked, my body might get turned on a little bit, and then I might actually want it. Or if we take a hot shower and you wash my back, or like, this is a big common one. Like, I feel so overwhelmed because all I can see is crap everywhere. Like the dishes, the laundry, the this and the that. Well, sometimes the biggest floor play can just be like, can we just tidy up all of this stuff? And then I will be able to breathe, take a breath, relax. So Emily Nagoski, she's a sex educator. She wrote Come As You Are. She talks about this concept of the enthusiastic maybe. And so sometimes it's not a yes or a no. Sometimes it's just a maybe. And often this maybe is like, I don't want sex now, but I want to want it. And so if there's that opening of like the wanting to want it, that's where we can get curious. And then that's where we can say like, hey, what would make this a yes? Or what could make this a yes? Knowing that we can still keep our no, we can always change our mind. But it just invites a little bit more opportunity for connection and openness.
Well, and I was thinking back to you saying, you know, the no, but, you know, like I want to take a nice warm bath or shower and then maybe tomorrow. Just the idea that you could state that to your partner and they would say, okay, that's good. That works. I understand. And being allowed to have that nervous system regulation happening, that would make me more excited and wanting and desiring that connection, because not only was there no expectation of something having to happen because they desired it or they wanted, you know, they want to have sex and I'm not in the mood, and now all of a sudden there's this feeling in between us, but this feeling of I can communicate this with you, you'll give me this space to regulate my nervous system, to come back into myself. I would definitely be more inclined to say, okay, I said yesterday, but now my butt is, can we revisit that? Because now I'm turned on to the idea, since you not only gave me the space, but I was able to come back and recenter.
Yeah. And that's kind of where we can play with masculine and feminine energies. And I want to be careful that we don't like overly gender it. But when partners can hold a really safe container, we're so much better able to surrender. And that safety does come with like taking the pressure off, asking what you need, what do you want? What do you need? What do you want to feel safe? What do you need to feel good? Or sorry, let me back it up. What do you need to feel safe? What do you want to feel good? Are two questions that anybody can ask any partner. But those questions, especially in cultivating that really like safe masculine container, allows the feminine to be able to soften and surrender so much easier. And like you just said, like all of a sudden, like, oh, I don't have to defend myself anymore. You're here to protect me as well. Oh, like good, because I've been carrying all this stuff all day long and I'm tired.
Yes, exactly.
And now, like, if somebody's willing to take some of that weight off our shoulders, like that can be very attractive and alluring.
Yeah, because even the weight of expectations is heavy. I mean, if you add that into the heavy day you've already had, it's like, please, then you feel the resentment of you're just adding one more thing to my already heavy load.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the last thing
and
we
it's
need is
interesting.
resentment.
Yeah. Kind of going, I know I'm like really harping on the safety thing, but I've worked with clients who are like, when I ask, do you feel safe with your partner? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then it's not till like session 4 or 5 that it starts coming out that like, no, actually like these are situations or environments. Like safety isn't just the absence of harm, right? It's like, is somebody showing up for you? Is somebody showing me that I am more than just a hole to poke something into?
Exactly.
More than an object, you know? And we need that. And also, this is kind of an unfair thing to especially male partners, but it is a reality, is that women are on the defense in our world all the time. Mm-hmm. The way we walk to our cars, the way we drive our cars, the way we're thinking about our kids in schools, the way we're thinking, like we are carrying so much that we are constantly like protecting ourselves against. And sometimes like we end up feeling so unsafe in our bodies that even if our partner isn't contributing to that harm, if they're not actively contributing to cultivating a safe space, there's just not going to be movement there.
Yeah, and that extends far beyond the bedroom. I mean, just feeling safe with your partner, there's just so much to that beyond just the sex. And I think you were talking about the safety in our world, and it's funny because I was having this conversation about, you know, like so my oldest is going to be a junior, and then she'll be not very far off on going on her own into college. And it's, you know, the conversations start to creep in of like safety in a bar, don't leave your drink down. You know, now there's all these things you can dip into your nail polish that'll see if you've been roofied, like, oh my goodness. And then there's the walking in campus and being on your phone and being distracted. And so we are always hyper vigilant regardless of our home environment. And so that's something that I don't necessarily think our male counterparts understand, because they can walk out of Target at 10 o'clock at night in the dark and not worry about somebody following them out or being under their car or whatever. And so that is something that I think partners can be really helpful in doing, is creating that safety.
And we tend to take it for granted when we're in long-term relationships, right? Because if we're like in a relatively healthy relationship where there's no emotional or physical abuse, it's easy to say like, yeah, I feel safe with this person. But again, it's like not the absence of harm. And it's one of those things like consent seems like something that like, oh, it's only necessary if it's like casual sex or it's in a dungeon or if it's whatever. But and then we just kind of get into this idea of like, well, we've been with each other so long. He knows what I like. I know what he likes. I know what I like. Da 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 da. And we just start running on these assumptions and scripts and old stories. And really, like, I cannot overemphasize the power of really spending time on cultivating the safety on both ends. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, that's when like your boring, basic, off-brand vanilla starts becoming really decadent and really delicious, because there's a softening that happens. There's a trust that happens that we don't even know we're not experiencing. But when we're running in our head, we're not trusting. Yeah. When we're in that hyper-vigilant state, we can't surrender. And pleasure really requires slowness, and cultivating safety is a part of being able to slow down.
Mm-hmm. So I want to know about the retreat that you did, and that feels very much like slowing down for women. What was the retreat premise, and how did you come to the idea of doing it? Because I I seriously had FOMO when I was like, "Ugh, I need to make something like that a priority for myself."
Yes, well, we'll do it again. So the retreat was called Receive, and the premise was to really invite women to learn how to receive rest and pleasure, both platonically and sexually. Women have been society's givers. We're so good at it. Many of us love it. We can like give and give. Mm-hmm. And to have the full range of the human experience, we must also receive. And our partners want us to receive the gifts that they're giving us as well, right? If we have one. So it was 5 nights in Tuscany in these luxurious villas surrounded by farmland. There was a babbling brook nearby. We woke up to Italian birds which sing differently than American birds. Like they have a little Italian accent. And we enjoyed like 2-hour lunches in the middle of the day and long, luxurious dinners. And we woke up and had freshly made cappuccinos and we just like savored them in bathrobes and bedhead. And I just was dumbfounded. Like I knew it would be a good experience for everyone. I deeply underestimated how transformational it would be for every single person that attended. Within like the first night, by the end of the welcome dinner, somebody who, going back to the repression, like you're not fooling anybody that you're sexually repressed. We can feel it. Everyone can feel it. Yeah. Right. And like, and it shows up in this like vibration and this energy just kind of like underneath the skin of the surface where you feel like this person just wants to like leap out of their skin at some point and like
you're thinking to yourself, she needs to get laid.
Yes.
You know what, it's way more complicated than that, but that's what you're
And so one gal who she did not know quite what she was getting herself into, and I love that for her. But she was like our biggest transformation. And by the end of the first night, like all of a sudden there was like this twinkle in her eye and this like mischievous smile that we're like, oh, something's happening in there that is. And over the course of the week, like she just became an entirely new person, so alive, so playful, so whimsical, so light and free. And like we got to know who she was beneath all the stuff that she had just been carrying for a really long, hard stuff. Like nobody can blame her for feeling the way she did when she arrived, right? Like she's just carrying a lot of stuff, doing a lot for a lot of people. I had one gal who hadn't slept more than 2 or 3 hours for a night for years. Oh. And I was asking how she functioned, like when we were traveling together. And she's like, oh, I don't. And the first night she got there, she slept 8 hours. And then she consistently slept 7.5 to 8.5 hours every night we were there, just because she had permission to do so, the space to do it, that time to just kind of unplug and disconnect from everyday life and fully like give yourself permission to do whatever it is you wanted. I had one gal who came for the villa, was like drawn, I think, more to the location than perhaps the theme. Yeah. And by the end, like she was texting her husband. She's like, everything's going to change. And I'm so excited. And she was in tears. And so it really opened up a lot in these women. I think community, being able to share and be witnessed in our stories has so much power and impact. I was surprised because I really like promoted downtime. We had the afternoons I scheduled in like the luxury of unscheduled time. And I thought people would really want to be on their own, like go for solo walks, read a book by the pool, take a nap. And these gals just stuck together. Like they just wanted to do everything together, sometimes broke off into smaller groups and so forth. But it's in these really rich conversations, and the time to have a conversation without being interrupted 15 times by a small child or something else to do. It was magic. It was really magical. And then what was especially cool was I did follow-up calls with most of the attendees when I got back, and the way they changed how they did life was remarkable. Like they were making entirely different choices about like, I don't need a treadmill in my office. I can sell the treadmill, walk outside in nature, and get a piano because it delights me.
Yeah.
And I think that experiences like that can be so life-giving and enriching, and they can stay at the experience like, oh, that was a nice to have. But when we fully, like, the intention of this was to fully embody rest and pleasure. Like, let your nervous system, let your body know what it feels like to be really restored and really delighted. And when you have that blueprint, that map in your body, that can guide everything when you return home. I think so many of us are so shut off from what rest feels like.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know the last time I had a full night's sleep. Or even if we're sleeping well, do we actually feel rejuvenated from the sleep that we have? And then from a pleasure perspective, it's really hard to desire something if we're not experiencing pleasure, and like we don't even know what that feels like. What's the vision here? What are we aiming for?
Yeah.
And it's not just about an orgasm. It's like, I want your arms to ooze with honey. I want you to like shiver under the skin when your partner walks in a room, or when you get an hour to yourself, by yourself, with yourself, and you can have like a self-pleasure session or something. But yeah, it was just, Tuscany was amazing. And then I programmed it with a lot of embodiment practices that really helped people drop into their bodies and understand what it felt like to feel.
Yeah, I've noticed with women, the one thing that I almost always end up starting with, even if they come to me for midlife weight gain or insomnia, brain fog, whatever it is, we usually get down to giving yourself permission to rest. Like they almost need somebody externally to give them that permission to rest. And then once they finally have it, then they recognize they can give it to themselves, and almost everything else will fall into place. I mean, just opening that door and saying, it's okay. Some women, and I was one of them, you hang your hat on being busy, being a martyr for your family, and to have somebody say to you, it's okay to put things down. I started living by, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Yeah. About 6 or 7, it was pre-COVID. And that changed everything. I mean, just being able to say no to things and not have the world crumble underneath you. It's like, oh, wait, the world still turns and people still get things done. I don't necessarily have to take it all on myself. It can do wonders for women especially.
Yeah. And I think the rest is absolutely essential, and it's what makes pleasure possible. But pleasure really becomes the fuel, right? So rest is kind of that restorative energy and so forth. But if we don't have also that pleasure element, like what gets us excited to get up in the morning? And like at the end of this life, because I had an experience a handful of years ago where like I was forced to stop, and then again, the world stopped or didn't stop turning, which I was amazed by. I was sick for 9 months and I couldn't do anything. I was like, it's still just spinning out there without me. But also like when you have an experience where you feel like, well, then the doctors tell you you have like 3 to 6 months to live, it changes how you live your life. And if we're just living for to-do lists and we are forgetting that we exist not just to rest so we can get through our to-do list, but rest so we can delight in the grass on our toes, or that hot shower, or the person in front of us and the conversation we're having with them, it changes everything. And I think that going back to like, are we like going back to the beginning of the conversation where there's some women who are just absolutely like, nope, that's the last thing I want. And there's some people who can't get enough of it. The women who are prioritizing pleasure, whatever that looks like, are going to be more likely to be in that category of can't get enough of it. Because they're so hungry for life, so hungry for connection, so hungry for like the depth of relationship and just sucking the marrow out of this like one wild and precious life.
Yeah. I think about people watching, and I've seen the people who are, you could tell they ooze life. And then there are people that you can tell are just trudging through.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody who would have a minute to think about which one they would want to be, would prefer trudging.
Yeah. And you and I have both been there, right? I think we've both been in the trenches. We've both done the trudging. There is no, like, I hope people aren't hearing any shame or anything like that from this. I hope that there's just like an invitation that there's more.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
You know, there's just an invitation without, like, it makes sense that we're in that, like, we've been in that one category. It makes sense. Like, what the world has cultivated for us. It's what the world has offered to us. And it's up to us to offer ourselves something else.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be life consuming. It's not like you quit being a parent and a spouse and a business owner and just decided to take in all things pleasure. You know, there's like, while that would sound wonderful every now and then, you can't live life that way. And so life still does happen, and there are, you know, things that have to get done and people that depend on you. That doesn't mean you can't carve out the time. And I think it's prioritizing the right things is what we really need to have that shift around.
Yeah. Well, and two, I think that that's one of the big fears is that, like, well, if I just prioritize pleasure, I'm just going to sit around and eat bonbons and watch Netflix all the time. Or I'm like, so what? Like, what if you just gave yourself however much time to watch Netflix and bonbons and watch how fast you get tired of that?
Oh, yeah.
Your body knows when enough is enough. And the problem is we've stopped trusting our body to talk to us and to teach us. You know, like, have the bottle of wine one night and no bottles of wine when you don't want it, you know, like I don't care what your, like, form of pleasure is, as long as you're trusting your own body, and the wisdom of it will say when enough is enough. Obviously, with alcohol, there are some genetic things and other factors, and there's addiction and all that stuff to play into it. But for the most part, like, we're not going to spiral off into pure hedonism and just leave everything else behind. What I believe is that pleasure, when it's fueled and stoked on a regular basis, and we learn to trust our body to know what is pleasure and what is numbness or emptiness or distraction, when we know what real pleasure is, we'll always know when we've had our fill. And when we're fueled by pleasure, parenting becomes easier, work becomes easier, doing the frickin' laundry becomes easier. Yeah. Like, all of that stuff is fueled by a different kind of energy that's less about performance and achievement and more about delight.
Yeah, and then once you delight in things, then when you are doing the laundry, instead of having more things of your to-do list popping into your brain, you're thinking about the experience you had the night before, or what you want to do later on in the evening, instead of, you know, laundry, dishes, dogs, kids. Yeah.
I mean, the stuff will all be there, right? Like, we have to work, we have to parent, we have to fold laundry until the end of time. We have to feed our dang children 3 meals a day, every single day.
I know.
But, like, are we doing that from a place of depletion and burnout, from repression, or are we doing that from a place of pleasure, rest, delight? Like, what's our fuel coming from? Is our fuel coming from just, like, the grind and pushing through? Or is the fuel coming from feeling really freaking good? I've tried it both ways, and this way is way more fun.
Yeah, I agree. I'll have what she's having. Oh, well, so I think that is actually a beautiful note to end this conversation. And if anybody needs to get more of Shauna, I will post in the notes how to contact you on your website and social media and your podcast and all the things. You did mention a retreat that's coming up, and then I'm sure you'll have more on the horizon, because this sounds like it was an awesome catapult into something. I'm going to have to I'm going to look at the date and see if I can get myself to the next one. But thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. I think it's really important for women to try to start exploring in those ways.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And I do want to say, like, we can cast a really big vision that can sound really intimidating and scary and just shut us down. And what I would encourage to anybody who's feeling a little bit scared, start with like 1%. just the smallest, itty bittiest, teeny tiniest little step, 1% has the capacity to change the entire trajectory of your whole life. And if it only stays at 1%, awesome. But you might want 1% more after that.
That's true. So. And going back to the very first time we had a conversation, it was very much, it was not crazy scary. It was very much about finding pleasure outside of the bedroom. And that's a beautiful place to start. I mean, you offered some great things to think about and exercises to use when we talked about that's where I started, to be honest. And now it's like, the world is my oyster.
The world is your oyster. I'm so happy for you, Victoria.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on again. And I look forward to seeing what's to come with all of the things, pleasure and intimacy and rest.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Byrd. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.